The SUV sector is the fastest growing sector in motoring by a country mile, and no manufacturer has more experience at the SUV game than Honda. It's been producing cars like the immensely successful CR-V for over 20 years now, so when we got the chance to run the CR-V's smaller brother, the HR-V, we couldn't really say no. Priced to go head to head with the likes of the Nissan Qashqai and the Skoda Yeti, we figured the 1.6 diesel would give us the best combination of performance and economy. Being a Honda, we also hoped it would provide the ultimate in reliability, and believe me, we certainly put that little theory to test. In just a few short months, we've covered no less than 13,000 miles, and in that time, we've travelled all over the country, and we've even taken in a couple of trips across the channel. Now though, we've come to the end of our time with the HR-V, so we're taking the chance to look back and let you know exactly what we think of it. Before my time with the HR-V, I never really considered myself to be a typical SUV owner. My kids are grown and gone now, so the school run's a thing of the past for me. Unlike a lot of people, I'm not a massive fan of the lofty driving position or the SUV styling. To me, they kind of all look the same. That said, I'm now a massive SUV convert, and the reason for that lies right here. Let's face it, the roads in the UK are absolute rubbish, especially in town centres. But because the HR-V comes on chunky tyres and relatively long travel suspension, it's able to cope with the garbage that we have to put up with. Sure, there are softer SUVs on the market, like the Nissan Qashqai for instance, but the HR-V is supple enough to absorb all the lumps and bumps, and yet it's pretty well tied down in corners as well, so it doesn't roll around too much. As I've said, ideally I'd like to sit a little closer to the ground, but I must admit, the elevated driving position and the big glass area do give you an excellent view of the road ahead. There's plenty of adjustment for the seats and steering wheel, and the seats themselves are surprisingly comfortable. Consequently, even on a long trip to my hometown of Newcastle, I still feel chirpy enough for a night out on the toon. Overall, it's pretty quiet when settled into a cruise, and it sips away at the fuel in proper frugal fashion, which is great because it means it's easy on the pocket, and also I don't have to stop at those lovely motorway service stations too often. I'm also a fan of the HR-V's dash. These piano black highlights look pretty classy. It's simply laid out and it's easy to use. That's because unlike the Honda Civic, which has more screens than the Enterprise, I can actually see and operate everything without taking my eyes off the road for too long. While we're in here, check this out. Yep, you're not seeing things. That actually does say 53 miles per gallon average, okay? And trust me, I'm no pussyfoot. Of course, the main reason why the HR-V is so good on the juice is primarily down to what's under the bonnet. Although the 1.6 litre diesel engine is not exactly a rocket ship, and it can get pretty rattly beyond 3000 RPM, you can actually find a sweet point with it. I'll demonstrate. Give it a sharp blast of throttle, quick shift through the gears, and you can actually get a fair turn of speed out the old curve. The good thing about this approach is you're never going to tire of it, because the HR-V's gear shift is an absolute gem. All good stuff then, but I've saved the best for last, because the Honda's real party trick lies around here. Because when it comes to load carry and versatility, no other SUV, well, other than the CR-V, has the same level of trickery as this. Flick them up, and there's enough room inside to get a bicycle. Fold them down, and there's enough room in here for an old washing machine or any old garbage that you want to take up the dump. Although I never expected the HR-V to be a sports car, I do think Honda could have made it a bit more engaging to drive. Pulling away from a standstill, I've never really gotten used to how sluggish the initial acceleration is, and I can never forgive the motor for being so flat and so vocal beyond 3000 RPM. Also, when I'm sitting in traffic, I'm inclined to switch the stop-start off, because the pronounced starter cough and the subsequent engine shake really puts dots on me. Also, I'm a bit of a steering nut, so I find the lack of connection a wee bit frustrating. I'm not a fan of the HR-V's touchscreen either. Although that said, I'm not a fan of any touchscreen. I find them slow and imprecise, and when the sun shines on them at a certain angle, all you can see is a load of greasy fingerprints. While we're on the subject of infotainment systems, which bright spark thought DAB was the way ahead? Sure, when it's working, it's far clearer than FM or medium wave. But if I drive about 100 miles, I can pretty much guarantee the reception will drop out at least a half a dozen times. As time has gone by, something that's become increasingly frustrating is Honda's overly sensitive collision avoidance warning system. While safety first is all well and good, the HR-V all too often reacts like a scared kitten, flashing up a warning light, It's screeching impending disaster whenever it senses a stationary object in its path.
Oh, there it is! There it is! What's it seeing?
Although it's not as easily spooked, the low-speed autonomous braking has a similarly delicate disposition. On one occasion, when I was attempting to park in front of a wooden fence, it actually clamped the brakes on in full emergency fashion, bringing things to a properly abrupt halt. We've come to Honda's service centre here in Winchester to have our HRV fitted and have a quick chat with the team. Being a Honda, the service intervals come around quite quickly, with just 12,500 miles between each service. At least the first service only takes an hour, which means by the time I've had a coffee and caught up on my emails, the HRV is good to go again. The costs are pretty reasonable too. At £215 for the first service, I guess that's not too bad. I think we've got the spec of our HRV absolutely spot on, and the guys at Honda agree, as they reckon most owners will plumb for the SE Navi option. Although it's not overly burdened with kit, it does come with essentials like sat-nav, climate control, Bluetooth, front and rear parking sensors, and lots of charging points, which are great for keeping my iPhone and my MacBook up to snuff. Honda doesn't do much in the way of add-ons, so if I'd wanted to upgrade to leather seats for instance, I would have had to upgrade to EX spec, which would have added another 3k to the invoice. After 6 months and 13,000 miles, I feel pretty well qualified to judge our HRV. And I have to say, I'll be sad to see it go. I certainly haven't abused the car, but I haven't given it an easy life either. Undoubtedly, what I like most about the HRV is how spacious, practical and easy it is to live with. As well as helping to get rid of loads of garden rubbish, I also used it as a bit of a removal van when I recently moved home. On one occasion, it was even press ganged into ferrying 3 people, a dog and a load of building material to and from Brittany. And it did so without so much as a squeak, a rattle or any hint of complaint. And on top of that, it did 50 miles per gallon. Granted, it's not the sharpest tool in the box, and the engine can be a bit gruff and a bit flat. Many people might describe the HRV as a bit of a box taker. Good at most things, but never really excelling at any. But I'm not so sure that's a bad thing. In one of my earlier reports, I suggested that the HRV wasn't particularly beguiling to drive, but the overall impression you're left with is one of healthy respect. And you know what? I'm still of that opinion now.